Welcome, my name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist at Fons and Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put together the pieces in the quilt called Bedford Falls. If you'd like to purchase this pattern or the magazine, you can visit our website and find out how to purchase it there. We are going to be using, in this project, pre-cut 10-inch squares, and we're going to use a light background fabric, and then we're going to use a print dark fabric that you can see becomes the frame, kind of a frame around a light square, and the outside setting triangles for this quilt. So I'm going to move these out of the way. Those are our staples that kind of repeat through the quilt. Those 10-inch squares, I have just a selection of them here. What we're going to do with these is we're going to take them and we're going to cut them in both directions, kind of like a window pane cut, so that each one of the large squares will yield 4 5-inch squares. And you can see by looking at the quilt really quickly that we're going to be grouping those 4 5-inch squares together to make a really fun color impact through the quilt. And because you're using a whole set of pre-cuts, you get a really good array of colors. So we're going to move those out of the way, and I have already cut one up. So we've got, if you're to keep yourself organized, sometimes a sticky dot with a little note on it if you're going to be working on a project and then having to stop and come back later. It's a great way to stay organized. So you can see here, I've cut these apart. I've got my 4 that match, and then I'm going to be needing to create blocks that look similar to this, or a variation of this. Because of the placement in the quilt, some of them will have all 4 light triangles put on. There are 48 that have only 3 light triangles. And then there are some that only have 2 triangles put on. So you'll have to go through the diagram, make sure that you make the required number. This is a quilt where you're going to want to do a little planning about where things are going to appear in your quilt for the number of triangles that go put onto the center. But I'm going to walk you through how to put together this block. You're going to be using the light squares that it requires, and it's going to have you take each of those squares and cut it diagonally corner to corner once to yield triangles like this. Now we're going to be joining the triangles to the sides of the block. Now you can use different methods to find the center, but the quickest is just to fold and find the very center. This is kind of the pinch method that you can come in, and then you know that where the little folds are is the center, so you can match those up. If you aren't confident enough moving that to the sewing machine, you can put a pin in it, but most of the time, with smaller pieces like this, they'll stay pretty much nested together so that you can easily move them over to your sewing machine. Now, if I was working on this one in the sewing center, I would have all my stack of squares and my triangles right beside me, so I can just feed in one after the other. And probably keep the 4 that match together so that I don't have to scramble through the whole entire stack to find its mates for constructing the actual quilt top. 1/4-inch seam, cut. Now you would want to use probably a cream color thread here. We're using red just so you can see it. A simple 1/4-inch seam here. You're going to take it to the iron, heat set that seam, and then press it open. For time, I'm just going to, because we have other pieces in this quilt to get through, I'm just going to use my fingernail to score open that seam there nice and flat. And you can see that that's the first side. And then, like I said, follow the diagram in your pattern for the number that you need to join to each side, and just repeat that skill to create this diamond square unit like this. Now the other piece that we need to create besides those diamond squares is the piece that looks like kind of like a picture frame. This is what it looks like. It starts with a simple rectangle or a square in the center, and from that really wonderful dot print, you're going to be cutting small rectangles for the sides and then rectangles for the top and the bottom. Simple piecing, joining the small rectangles to each side, pressing that open, and then joining the top and the bottom to make this kind of framed block. Now we've got the two main blocks for this quilt constructed, but as you notice, everything's not a square anymore. It's all turned to put on point, meaning that it stands on its tip. Well, so how do we arrange that and how do we create this quilt? Well, this is the time when you're going to be also following your directions. You're going to be cutting some large squares of that fun black dot, and it's going to require you to cut diagonally both directions on this to yield triangles like this. The reason why we cut them this way is that the bias edge is in here. This is straight of grain. Straight of grain is important when we're getting to the outside edge of our quilt so that it doesn't distort and become wavy on the outer edge when it's going to be taken to a quilter or you're going to machine quilt it. So we're cutting them as straight of grain on the outside edge that we're going to be using here in a minute. Okay, now in order to construct this quilt, the top corner of the quilt is a portion of a square and a square, or a diamond and a square kind of block. You'll notice it has triangles on two sides, but it's missing the others. But that is the top corner of our quilt. And then we come in to using some of, these are on the outer edges. Remember those that we cut with, talking about straight of grain. So we go like this. And then we bring in some of those framed blocks. One like this. And then I've also created blocks. Remember I said there was a variety of ones that, this one has 3 of the triangles put on. Here's an outer edge. And then we need another over here. 3 triangles put on at an outer edge here. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I need my 4th piece. And this is getting into the interior of the quilt. And you can see that it would go here. Some of more of my framed blocks will go here, and a third one here. And back to setting in. This is probably where maybe a design wall would be a really great thing to have, so you can lay out your blocks and arrange things so you can put the 4 grouping of the blocks that you like together. I guess you could take your square and square type blocks and make them random, but the color impact is bigger when they're grouped together as 4. Now, the construction is simple, diagonal rows. So this would be my first row here. I would bring these in right sides together, lining up this edge and seam here, press and your seam allowances out, and do the same here. So then your first row is constructed, and then come in and do your second row. Now this is where you're probably going to want to maybe pick up some pins so that you can take it to the sewing center and not get them in the wrong order. Because you look at this and think, this is so different than a lot of the construction that you see in diagonal sets, because this seems very odd to pick up and have this really tiny triangle, a portion of a block, and a large one. So you're going to want to make sure that you put them in the correct order. In my sewing space, what I would probably do is go ahead and pin this one in place, and then stack them. Block 1, block 2, block 3, and then take them to my sewing center. So I would have them in the order that I need to actually construct. For more information and for other videos that we have available, visit our website and you can create Bedford Falls for yourself. Thanks for joining me.